Everyone, and welcome to our presentation. First of all, let me thank you all for coming here today. As you can see on the screen, our topic today is the doctrine of separations of powers. Let me start by saying a few words about our own content, which is the first one we have introduction about our members. Next, we have introduction about our main focus today, which is the doctrine of separations of powers. Next, we will tell you about the three branches, which is legislative, executive, and judiciary. And finally, at the end of the slides, we shared to you guys about the source where we get our research about. First of all, let me introduce you guys to our members which have been working so hard to succeed this slide. We have our first presenter, Nur Irdiana Nafisa binti Azizul Shah. Next, we have Nur Alifa Ilyana binti Muhammad Rosli. The next one, we have me, myself, which is Nur Syafiqah Nabiha binti Muhammad Basir. And then we have our one and only male presenter, which is Muhammad Irfan bin Abdul Rahim. And the last one, we have Nurul Ain Farhana binti Rosli. Next, I will focus on our introduction for our main topic for today, which is the doctrine of separations of power. Separation of powers refers to the division of a state's government into branches, each with separate, independent powers and responsibilities, so that the powers of one branch are not in conflict with those of the other branches. Administration in Malaysia follows constitution supremacy, which means everything must be practiced and followed in these branches accordance with constitution only, and anything in contrast will be declared null and void. There are three major organs of the government, which is the legislative, executive, and judiciary. Next, we will focus on our three major issues, which is the three branches of government. The first one, we have legislative, which is the function of legislative is to make laws. It has to perform various functions such as lawmaking, representation, supervision, financial, and amending the constitution, which is one of the most important government between these three branches. Next, we have executive, which is an entity that exercises authority and hold responsibilities to govern the country and the states by administrate, implement, execute, and enforce the law set by the legislative entity. And the last one, we have judiciary, which is an entity that interprets and applies the law in courts. The body that responsible for interpreting and implementing the law. This body is also known as the legal system, and its members consist of judges and magistrates who are usually appointed by the respective heads of states. They also usually carry out their duties in court and cooperate with the authorities, especially the police, in upholding the law.
For the first branches is known as the legislative. Basically, a legislature is an assembly with the authority to make a law for a political entity such as a country or city. They are often contrasted with the executive and judicial powers of government. Most of the law enacted by legislature, usually known as primary legislation. In addition, legislatures may observe and still govern action with the authority to amend the budget that involved. The members of a legislature are called legislators. In democracy, legislators are most commonly popularly elected, although we still using indirect election and appointment by the executive, particularly for bicameral legislatures featuring an upper house. For democratic legislature, we have six major functions, which is representation, deliberation, legislation, authorizing expenditure, making governments, and oversight. For representation, there are 5 ways that representation can be achieved in a legislature. Firstly, how the rules of the legislature ensure representation of constituents. Secondly, how the constituents perceive their representative. Thirdly, how well the composition of the legislature matches the demographic of the wider society. Next, how well representatives actually respond to the needs of the constituents. And lastly, how well the representative represent the interests of the society as a whole. Secondly is deliberation. One of the major functions of a legislature is to discuss and debate issues of major importance to society. Thirdly, we have legislation. Legislatures have normally the sole power to create laws. The substantive extent of this power depends on the details of the political system. Number 4 is authorizing expenditure. The origins of the power of the expenditure which legislatures typically having in passing or denying government budgets which the monarch will have to consult before raising taxes. Next, we have making governments. The power of the legislature over the government is stronger than other political entities. Lastly, we have oversight. There are several ways in which the legislature can hold the government accountable, including questioning, interpellation, and votes of confidence.
In Malaysia, while the monarch is the head of state, real executive power is vested in the cabinet, led by the Prime Minister as the head of government. The Malaysian constitution stipulates that the Prime Minister must be a member of the lower house of Parliament who commands a majority in Parliament. The executive branch of the government of Malaysia consists of the Prime Minister as the head of the government, followed by the various ministers of the cabinet. As you can see at the picture, Tan Sri Anwar Ibrahim is our Prime Minister right now and assisted by the Council of Ministers. So the main role of this authority is: number 1, make decision on policy and enforce law. Number 2, taking care of foreign affairs. Number 3, appoint government officials. Number 4, making legal instrument and bylaw. Number 5, make infrastructure development. Number 6, formulate and implement the highest policy of the country. Next, we move to Chief Executive of the State Government in Malaysia. Menteri Besar is a title for the Chief Executive of the State Government in Malaysia that have a king or sultan, namely Perlis, Johor, Kedah, Perak, Selangor, Negeri Sembilan, Pahang, Terengganu, and my beloved state, Kelantan. For states that do not have a king or sultan, the title of the Chief Executive of the State Government is the Ketua Menteri. Next, we move to Chief Executive of the State. Next, the main role of Chief Executive of the State Government. First, implement the state executive powers held by the head of state. Second, accompanying the king or YDP state to the meeting of the King's Council. Third, heading the state government meeting and state administration machinery. That's all from me. Thank you.
Next, we have judiciary. First of all, I'd like to give you an overview of judiciary. Let me introduce to you the Chief Justice of Malaysia, Tengku Maimun Tuan Mat. The Chief Justice of Malaysia, who known as the Chief Justice of the Federal Court, is the office and title of the head of the Malaysian judiciary system. Tengku Maimun Tuan Mat is a Malaysian lawyer and the 10th Chief Justice of Malaysia. As you can see on the screen, there are several courts under the judiciary system. The hierarchy of courts begins from the Magistrate Court, High Court, Court of Appeal, and finally the Federal Court, which is known as the highest court in Malaysia. The highest position in the judiciary of Malaysia is the Chief Justice of the Federal Court of Malaysia, followed by the President of the Court of Appeal, the Chief Judge of Malaya, and the Chief Judge of Sabah and Sarawak. Then, let's take a look at the Magistrate Court. Jurisdiction of Magistrate Court. First, civil jurisdiction. The total amount of disputes or claims less than 100,000 ringgit Malaysia. Secondly, we have criminal jurisdiction. Here, criminal offences that are subject to fine and imprisonment not exceeding 10 years in prison or a fine only, and can be sentenced to a sentence not exceeding 5 years, imprisonment, a fine not exceeding 10,000 or 12 lashes.
Usually require an affidavit. What is affidavit? Affidavit is a written statement of
decision. The court system in Malaysia is structured according to a pyramid hierarchy. Through this system, individuals or groups who are not satisfied with the decision of the court trip can appeal to a higher court. The next is, all judges are appointed by the Yang di-Pertuan Agong with the advice of the Prime Minister. Appointments, promotion and removals are under the authority of His Majesty, the Yang di-Pertuan Agong. A judge cannot be dismissed arbitrarily without any reasonable cause. Judges are not allowed to participate in politics. The purpose is for judges to be protected from the political influence to guarantee justice and legal equality. The government's legal advisor is the Attorney General. The Attorney General will be the public prosecutor or defense attorney for the government. The Attorney General is assisted by the legal and judicial service officers.